Hey everybody, Kevin here with Ride Utah TV. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're just going to get right into it. We're not going to go into any openings. I wanted to update you on what has happened ever since that fallout from FabRats posting the video about his run-in, Paul Cox's run-in, with the Department of Wildlife Resources regarding quagga mussels. It's been quite a journey to get to this point where we're at right now, but there has been some serious major improvements in the way Utah and the Utah Legislature works through the Division of Natural Resources and interfaces with citizens. And so we're just going to get right into it. But to bring you up to speed, if you don't remember, last year Paul Cox at the YouTube channel FabRats posted a video where he had been contacted by a sergeant with the Division of Wildlife Resources regarding quagga mussel violation. And if you'll remember, he was cited for illegally transporting quagga mussels and transporting quagga mussels across state line, and there was going to be this big, huge thing, right? I can't remember exactly how the Coxes handled it. I know that they worked with the state of Utah. They were able to hammer that out and come to a resolution. Oh, I do remember. They were going to work with the state of Utah and come to a resolution, but then the district attorney, the county attorney down in Kane County, where the prosecution was filed, looked over the case and ended up just completely dismissing it. Said there's nothing here. That raised some red flags with us at Ride Utah TV. Obviously, we're at Ride Utah. We represent boaters, and we are a voice for boaters. We wanted some of this information out there. We wanted to know exactly what you, as users of Utah's recreational assets, needed to expect with regard to how state law and state agencies were going to interface with you as a recreationalist. So we pulled some grammar requests, and in the process of pulling those grammar requests, we got a lot of records about that particular instance. We were able to see the exact charging documents and the evidence provided by the Division of Wildlife Resources that they had submitted to the county attorney and were using in order to prosecute the Coxes. And what we found was incredibly alarming. There was really nothing there. In fact, it was an unprosecutable case, and which is why, because Paul Cox hired a lawyer and was going to fight it, the county attorney in Utah, we have county attorneys instead of district attorneys, and sometimes if I say DA, people understand better what I'm talking about. But it's a county attorney, which is similar to a DA, looked at that and said, there's nothing here. The state will lose. Which meant it was an unfair prosecution. We talked about a lot of that in previous videos. So we started to kind of raise the red flag with the legislature. We started looking into other cases, and we put in grammar requests, and we were able to get filing documents and charging documents on lots of cases, and we started to see a trend that was one case after another, after another, after another of incomplete prosecution attempts. So the county attorneys would receive the information from the DNR. They would they would send you a citation in the mail with a fine and the opportunity to challenge it. If the person paid the fine, then the matter was resolved. If the person challenged it, many times the prosecutors had to drop the charges because there just wasn't anything there. In fact, in the Paul Cox instance, the only evidence that was provided to the court was cell phone videos of a laptop playing FabRats videos. That was it. There was no investigations, no evidence, there was no scientific evidence, nothing. It was just hearsay. And so we started to raise some concern there. We said, how come the Division of Wildlife Resources can do this? What makes this legal? Well, that caught the attention of the governor's office and the leaders up at the Division of Natural Resources, who said we need to check into this. Well, at the exact same time, unbeknownst to us, a new division which was created at the Division of Natural Resources called the Division of Recreation had formed its own police force called the Recreation Rangers. We didn't know this until one day I was sitting with a sheriff and his phone rang, and he was told that, some rangers were harassing people at a recreation site in this county, and they didn't know why or who or what. And the sheriff actually had a difficult time trying to get to the bottom of what was going on in his county and why were his citizens being harassed. And so this all happened at the exact same time. So we started looking into it. We realized that the Division of Recreation had created a division called the Recreation Rangers. Now, the Division of Recreation is a grant organization. They oversee a lot of the grant money that is diverted from tax revenues to specific grant funding accounts, and they disperse that in order to help strengthen Utah's recreation assets. In our mind, we thought, why is the division that is responsible for handing out the money also creating their own police force? This doesn't make any sense. In fact, with our history with governments and the way governments operate, this was extremely alarming to us. Why would an organization need their own police force? And so we started rising up in opposition to it as Ride Utah and UTV Utah, the other large OHV representative group in the state of Utah. Right then, we started getting all kinds of opposition from within our own circles. Guys that we work with in OHV started asking us, stop, putting pressure on the DNR. Just stop. This pressure just didn't make a lot of sense to me. Just one second here. Clear a notification on the phone. I'm using my iPhone today. And I couldn't understand why some of this was happening. But it all makes sense now. And as I talk about this new law that was passed by the legislature this year, it'll make sense to you as well. Well, we were literally blacklisted from a couple of larger groups around Utah's motorized recreation community. In fact, they started calling us anti-law enforcement and started saying we were working against the groups and stuff. So, and these were guys that we had gone on rides with and we thought we were friends with, and they instantly just turned on us, blocked us on social media, and didn't make a lot of sense. But we nevertheless never forgot our charge as Ride Utah to represent the user. And we knew that having a police force protecting the division that hands out the money was not a good look for Utah. So we went and took a door through or an approach through the governor's office, used all of this combined evidence, and they started also looking into things. Now, they didn't keep us in the loop on everything because there are policy matters and contractual obligations and privacy concerns and all that. But the legislature did conduct an audit, and they started looking into a lot of the way the Division of Natural Resources operates. And the communication that I was receiving back from the legislature was that there is a lot of stuff to be concerned about, a lot of red flags, was the way one legislator put it. And so the state started looking at ways that they could remedy this. Well, unbeknownst to us, 40 years ago, an audit had been performed at the Division of Natural Resources that flagged the way they operate their law enforcement as being a poor governmental practice. And it made some suggestions that needed to happen, but the legislature 40 years ago didn't make those changes. Every decade since, for the last 30 years, audits have flagged the exact same concerns and made the exact same recommendations. Now, keep in mind, our recommendation was, from Ride Utah's standpoint, was just get rid of all DNR law enforcement and take that money and fund your county sheriff, because your county sheriff is responsible for answering to his citizens. That was our initial approach as we went into this. Let's just get rid of all that, because it's really redundant law enforcement isn't necessary, especially in rural Utah. We pointed out that there was like 7 different law enforcement agencies, different agencies that oversaw rural Utah. That was just way too many, where in a big city you may only have 3. City, county, and highway patrol, right? Out in rural Utah, it just grows exponentially from there. unbeknownst to us, but what the legislature at the time was dealing with was the recommendations from this audit. And those recommendations were based off a lot of things that we never factored in, like federal contracts, retirement contracts, contracts with employees and all that. And it started to become clear that if we were to get rid of all DNR law enforcement, a lot of guys who are great guys, who are our friends, would have lost their retirements. So the recommendations from the audit were to combine all of DNR's different law enforcement agencies into one singular law enforcement agency. Now, one thing we weren't aware of at the time, but I've since found out, was that there was some big time infighting at DNR. You had the Division of State Parks and the Division of Recreation trying to essentially do the same things and police the same people and police the same sites, and overlap, and things weren't going smooth, and it wasn't working very smooth. And publicly, the directors come and say, "Yeah, we're friends, we're getting along," but behind the scenes, it was bad, and ended up resulting in the director of Utah State Parks leaving the system, and hopefully in the near future, the director of Recreation also leaving. And I'll tell you why. Not being forced out, but I'll tell you why. Because government was definitely not working on behalf of the citizens. So, legislator heard all these complaints, cries, whatever you want to call it. Heard all of these concerns, started looking at, realized we have to make some changes. He made a phone call to the director of the Division of Natural Resources, Joel Ferry, who had also, keep in mind, I was working from the governor's office angle, not so much the legislature's angle. I know that the governor had personally called Director Ferry and ordered these changes to be made, and some changes to be made, and to look into some of this stuff. Well, the legislator, governor, and other people like us, and several other voices coming to the director saying these changes have to occur, started realizing everybody's sort of on board with this, including the higher brass at the Division of Natural Resources, realizing, man, we're really screwing this up. We got to fix it. We've got to get things working better for the citizens. And they decided now, even though it's been kicked down the can's been kicked down the road for 40 years, now is the time to make that change. And so Ryan Wilcox, a legislator, took that ball, and they started creating a new code that would peel away law enforcement responsibilities from the different divisions of the natural resources and put them in their own division. And so this is going to do a couple of things. One of the things that I would point out is, I got the law pulled up here, and I'll just read you the highlight provisions. So this is, if you want, just have an idea of what this multi-100-page bill says. It defines terms. It creates a division of law enforcement within the DNR. It establishes roles of the DNR director, the division director, division of law enforcement director. Outlines division's enforcement authority, including the division's ability to initiate civil proceedings, which is right, law enforcement has to do that. But that means it takes those authorities away from the GWR, and some of the other agencies within DNR. It authorizes the division to enter into contracts and agreements, which of course they have to do, and this is a obvious result of the Paul Cox thing. It moves management of the aquatic invasive species interdiction account from the Division of Wildlife to the Division of Law Enforcement. That account and that program had been bastardized and was being used to target Utah citizens, and it was specifically addressed in this bill, which I think is interesting when you consider all of the things that the DNR operates and DNR does. So now the bill was brought in. It was numbered number 469, one of the last bills to be numbered. It was, and usually that means it was a late bill because there was so much work to be done. Now, I'll put that in perspective. I had a very relatively simple bill that we were working on that was numbered 483 that we started during the legislative session. We didn't even begin looking at changes, hadn't even contacted the attorneys before the session started, and it was labeled 483. So it was numbered right after this bill was numbered. That tells me that this was a work in progress and wasn't completed until after the session had already started. But it popped up toward the end. It received accolades through the House and the Senate, and it was signed by the governor. Essentially, what this is going to do now is we've got the next year to work through some major entanglements, that the same entanglements that had prevented previous legislatures from initiating this action, but that still need to be done, right? So it separates the administrative functions from the law enforcement functions at the Division of Natural Resources. Currently, in order to work for the Division of Natural Resources, you have to be a law enforcement officer. Your parks managers are law enforcement officers. Your the guy that's out steadying fish is a law enforcement officer. And now, granted, these, there is a place for law enforcement at the state level. It was just, how did that look? And of course, we had a different look. We wanted to give all of the law enforcement authority to the to the county sheriff, and pretty much everybody agrees with that, except there just was some statutory things that made that impossible. Would have killed this whole effort if we had tried to push that, and it would have hurt a lot of people. Would have hurt a lot of families, and put a lot of guys out of work, and people who had really dedicated their lives to working for the state. They're still going to have those same opportunities. They're still going to keep their retirements. We're not throwing guys out on the street, which, I can't operate that way, and we appreciate their service and the work they did. But we have taken the administrative functions and moved them over to here, and the law enforcement functions and moved them over to here. This is a change that I think other states will copy, and it's going to make life a lot easier for our local sheriffs. Frankly, you're going to have, hold on, I got a phone ringing here, and maybe you're hearing that in the video. I apologize, I didn't have time to set up a GoPro. But you're going to have sheriffs who are now able to make one singular phone call. Oh, another part of the bill is the county sheriff will maintain the lead on all law enforcement activities in his county. So if the DNR Division of Law Enforcement decides they're going to go check out a event, they have to let the county sheriff know they're doing it. Now, if the county sheriff wants to call the event organizers, like, hey, Joe, you've got 45 OHVs meeting at X Hotel's parking lot. Just want to let you know that the Division of Natural Resource Law Enforcement is going to show up, and they're going to check registrations to let your people know. Where beforehand, before all this, they would just show up in force, and I think I've talked a little bit about that in some of our previous videos about them doing that, and that was a problem. It didn't look good for the state, but now we're putting that lead role back into the county sheriff's role. And if it doesn't happen, if they don't let the county sheriff know, there are a couple of county sheriffs I know that have told them, you better let us know every single move you make, and it wasn't that, it was more colorful language than that, or else we're going to kick you out of our counties. And the county sheriff still has that authority and that right, because he's elected by the people in that county to oversee the constitutional law enforcement and, that is taking place within that county's borders. So this is a good middle ground piece of legislation. It wasn't exactly what we started off, but it ended up in a place that I think is going to be a really good thing for Utah. We're going to keep an eye on it. We don't want it to grow into this huge police force. Regardless, even if it does, the county sheriff is still going to have last say and ultimate authority in his counties. And we were really, really hoping that was going to be the outcome, and we got it. So DNR got reformed. Thank you to Governor Cox for making sure this happened. You probably, if you're in Utah's recreation community, you've probably heard some people anti Ride Utah because of this effort. I really think the Division of Recreation has worked to divide the user group, and they absolutely 100% need to change their tactics. They're siding with, well, look, they're going to have to change, because they have to decide now, are you going to be law enforcement or are you going to be administrative? Well, currently, all of the big wigs at the Division of Recreation are also law enforcement officers. They're going to have to choose. You can either go work for the Division of Law Enforcement or you can stay at Division of Recreation and be just recreation only. And I think that's going to be a good thing for Utah. Thanks for watching the video. Please make sure you like, share, subscribe, tell people about it, and we'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.